A chaotic situation has emerged in the US supermarkets, where people are seen trying to buy bags of rice. Such visuals are a result of the export restrictions on the non-basmati rice, which the Indian government imposed last week on July 20th. According to Directorate General of Foreign Trade, the government amended the export policy of the commodity from free to prohibited. So now, to curb the chaos in its supermarkets, US stores have limited the sale of rice to only one bag rice per family. The chaos might seem that India's export restriction policy has negative implications, but no. Such strategies are often adopted by nations worldwide in order to ensure food availability for its citizens and protect its domestic market. Hello and welcome, I am Shreya and you're watching the Pamphlet. Rice is a staple food for about half of the world's population, with Asia consuming about 90% of global supply, amongst which India is one of the key players in the export of rice to many nations in the world. It accounts for about more than 40% of global rice exports, which amounted to 55.4 million tons in 2022. Over 140 countries are the net importers of India's non-basmati rice. Among the key buyers, we have Benin, Bangladesh, Angola, Cameroon, Djibouti, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Kenya, and Nepal, who use rice as a staple food. The recent prohibition by India on the export of non-basmati rice is done keeping in mind the following reasons. First, the late arrival of the monsoon led to a large rain deficit up to mid-June. And while heavy rains since the last week of June have erased the shortfall, they have caused significant damage to the crops too. As a result, the area under paddy cultivation could drop marginally in 2023 because of erratic monsoon rainfall distribution. Also, the El Nino may lead to dry conditions and lower yield of rice. Second, India's demand for food tends to rise as we approach the wedding and festival season, which starts from the month of September onwards. The Food Ministry data has reported that the retail price of the grain climbed about 15% in Delhi this year, while the average nationwide price gained more than 8% in the last 2 trading weeks. Third, India has been growing through a cost of living crisis, but not as extreme as it is in the West. The prices of staples have currently seen a rise in India, wherein vegetable prices jumped by 12% in the month of May and June this year. Also last month, the retail inflation jumped to 4.8%. Fourth, the Great Deal suspension between Russia and Ukraine and the expectation that the latter might also retaliate is another reason for the restriction export of rice by India. Also, the Russian missiles are not only causing disruptions in the Ukraine but also affecting the global food supply chains. India's response to imposing a ban on the export of rice is to ensure availability for its own citizens before helping the world. Now, to clarify, India has not announced restrictions on the export of rice to the African nations, as they have been India's permanent customers. In fact, in the month of June this year, India announced export of 75,000 tons of fully broken white rice under government-to-government deals to Senegal, Gambia, and Djibouti. Earlier in March, the government permitted exports of 2.5 lakh tons of broken rice to Senegal and 1 lakh tons to Gambia. In addition, about 10,000 tons of the rice variety were permitted to be shipped to Djibouti and Ethiopia. Like we previously discussed, export restrictions by governments is a common practice around the world, as we saw during the food crisis of 2007 to 2008. Several countries imposed various forms of export restrictions on food staples in order to ensure domestic availability of supplies and in some cases to contain the growing public discontent about the rising prices of food. Also, as per the World Trade Organization, export restrictions are highly relevant in the context of environmental protection. By placing restrictions on exports, countries may want to prevent or slow down the depletion of their natural resources, including minerals, fisheries, forestry, and fresh water, or may simply choose to keep them for the benefit of future generations. Therefore, as a major exporter of food items, India has every right to impose restrictions to ensure availability of food for its own citizens. Hence, the Indian government prohibited the export of rice, citing rise in domestic prices and decreased sowing in several key rice-producing states because of erratic monsoon. In fact, in past as well, India has prohibited the exports of other food items, including rice. In September 2019, the Indian government banned export of onions and imposed a country-wide stock limit to bring down prices of onions that soared ahead of the state elections in Maharashtra and Haryana. Later in September 2020, the government imposed a further ban on all other varieties of onion except those cut sliced or broken in powder form to increase availability of the commodity in the domestic market and contain the rising prices. However, the ban was lifted in March this year as the shortage in onion supply passed away with the arrival of the Rabi crop. Later in May 2022, India, the world's second largest wheat producer, banned wheat exports as part of its measures to control the rising domestic prices. Union Minister Piyush Goyal in April this year stated that the ban on the export of wheat will continue as India has to ensure adequate supplies of the food grain for its domestic market and keep the inflation in check. Then again in September 2022, the Indian government banned the exports of broken rice and imposed a 20% duty on exports of various grades of rice, as the country was itself grappling with high prices of food grains. The ban was lifted later in the month of November 2022. The export restriction policy by countries around the world, including India, although criticized often, showcases the government's concern for domestic demands and possible price rise. It also shows government's efficiency in planning better to protect its citizens and domestic market. Thank you for watching. If you like the content, do like, share and subscribe to our channel, The Pamphlet.